story in sports is the quintessential Jewish story.
Beckham, glorious!
A kid today sees a member of the Jewish faith winning the Super Bowl. It's very powerful.
It's good to have you with us.
Nelson Mandela famously said, sports have the ability to change the world.
We are connecting to that modern tradition of being strong and resolute and, yes, athletic, competing against the world.
In the beginning, we respected the strongest among us: Samson, Gideon, David. Yet over time, the biblical image of the strong and powerful Jew gave way to a stereotype of people who are weak, unwilling to fight, unable to truly compete on the athletic field. This belief that Jews don't do sports exists even today, sometimes humorously reinforced by Jews themselves in movies, television, and in pop culture.
This is ridiculous. Jews can't play basketball.
But where did it come from? How did this stereotype begin? The answers can be found in the early practice of our faith. Between the eras of the first and second temples, we were ruled by the ancient Greeks, who idolized physical perfection. And then came the Romans, whose sporting events were barbaric.
I don't think anyone in Western civilization would embrace Greek and Roman sports today. Sports then was a form of worshiping the body, and it was kind of brutal too, not to mention murderous, so that wasn't very Jewish.
Getting involved in sports in the ancient time period was one of the things that took Jews away from being Jewish. So the reconciliation of being a Jew and being involved in sports really has a 2,500, almost 3,000-year history.
Over the centuries that followed our exile from the land of Israel, the hardships of the diaspora made pursuit of sports near impossible for our people. And for those young people who wanted to participate, governments put up barriers, rabbis discouraged our involvement, parents pushed their children toward careers that could be stable, respectable, and portable in times of crisis. For Jewish mothers, the idea of my son, the doctor, was much more appealing than my son, the football player. But as the 19th century was coming to a close, the winds of change were in the air.
The iconic moment is 1898, the Second Zionist Congress. Dr. Max Nordau makes a very important speech, and he says what we need as part of the Zionist movement is muscular Judaism, a cadre of young men and young women who are strong, who are going to dispel the image of the weak Jew, and who will compete against the world on the athletic field, perhaps someday on the military field.
In fact, the transformation that Nordau wished for was already underway. Jewish athletes had won 6 gold medals at the first modern Olympics in Athens 2 years earlier. And as the 20th century dawned, a new era began for Jews in sports.
Beginning in the 1920s, the idea that begins to permeate is that sports can be used as a wedge to promote greater identification with Judaism. Kids who come to play, maybe they'll stay to pray.
There was no Kraft stadium in the shtetl. There was a time where Jews were unable to walk into a public park and engage in a healthy game of sports.
Maccabee clubs in the 1920s and 30s came into existence because clubs in Germany and Austria and in America, like the New York Athletic Club, wouldn't admit Jews.
We had to be very creative in order to survive, using our seichel, our wisdom.
Driven by our need to combat discrimination and by our values of inclusiveness and social justice, we invented new games such as the Paralympics, as well as entirely new leagues. We also became pioneers in the art of self-defense, using what he learned battling anti-Semitic thugs in the Jewish quarter of Bratislava in the 1930s. Emmy Lichtenfeld created Krav Maga, which later became the Israel Defense Forces fighting system. Today, Israeli coaches train law enforcement officials around the world.
The future is incredibly bright.
We also found new ways to be involved as commissioners and owners. In the English Premier League, Chelsea, Manchester United, and the Tottenham Hotspurs have Jewish owners. In fact, the Hotspurs fans call themselves the Yids. And in June 2019, the club came close to winning the title of European champions. Ajax, with its fans known as Super Jews, is one of the most dominant soccer clubs in Europe and has a deep connection to the historically Jewish city of Amsterdam. In the United States, over 1/3 of professional football teams, 20% of hockey teams, and almost 40% of basketball teams are owned by Jews.
Jeff Lurie and Bob Kraft fighting it out on the field, that's a positive message to our kids.
Jewish-owned teams have won championships in nearly every field of sports. And some of the legendary coaches are members of the tribe. There was Red Auerbach, who led the Celtics to 9 National Basketball Association championships. Alexander Gomielsky, the father of Soviet basketball. Ray Arcel, who trained 20 world championship fighters, including Roberto Duran and Larry Holmes. Soviet ice hockey Hall of Fame coach Nikolai Epstein, who led the national junior team to multiple European championships and developed some of Russia's greatest young hockey players. Irina Viner, first gymnastics coach to receive the Olympic Order in recognition of her outstanding achievement in global sports. And Jose Peckerman, who led the Argentina national team and then guided Colombia to its first World Cup appearance in 16 years. The history of sports in the 20th century includes so many Jewish stars basking in the thrill of victory. English sprinter Harold Abrahams not only won the gold medal in the 100 meters at the 1924 Olympics, but whose victory in those games was told in the Oscar-winning film Chariots of Fire. In the boxing ring, there were world champions Barney Ross, Benny Leonard, and Max Baer.
Boxing was very big. Jewish boxers came out of the hardscrabble neighborhoods. They were starkers. Starker was tough guys.
But our success sometimes resulted in feeding a different negative stereotype.
In the 1930s, there was an editorial writer for the New York Daily News named Paul Gallico who said, Jews are great in basketball because it fits the Jewish mentality. They're sneaky, they're smart alecky. Of course, it was anti-Semitic, but it was a Jewish sport. When the Knicks started their first season, 4 of the 5 starters were Jewish. Nat Holman, Dolph Shays, all these great players.
In fact, the very first basket in the NBA was scored by a Jew. And in more recent years, Jewish women have made their mark on the basketball court. Sue Bird, and of course Nancy Lieberman, one of the all-time greatest female players and the first woman to coach a professional men's basketball team.
Nancy Lieberman, the redhead from Queens who came to put women's basketball on the map.
And on the baseball field, there are multiple Jewish Hall of Famers.
Koufax decides that he's not going to play on Yom Kippur.
He inspired a whole generation of Jews to the sanctity of Yom Kippur. And Greenberg, same story.
Greenberg was one of the first American professional athletes to leave the game at the height of his career and go to fight the Nazis and the scourge of anti-Semitism. The Nazi regime told German champion high jumper Gretel Bergmann she couldn't compete in the 1936 Olympics because she was Jewish. She was not alone.
We have the Berlin Games, Hitler's Games. What they wanted to show was Aryan supremacy, and to have Jews on the victory stand would be a counter-narrative to what they wanted to project.
Banning of athletes to appease Adolf Hitler in 1936 was followed by tragedy during the Second World War, as dozens of Jewish European footballers were murdered in the Holocaust. And Germany's effort to rebuild its Olympic image was shattered in 1972 in Munich.
They're all gone.
In the former Soviet Union, athletes sometimes concealed their Jewish backgrounds in order to compete. And like chess legend Garrick Weinstein, better known as Garry Kasparov, sometimes even changed their names in order to pursue their passion. Despite these enormous challenges, we made history, set records, and won medals. And in a defining moment in Israel's sports history, shocked the world. 1977, Maccabi Tel Aviv was facing the Red Army basketball team in the European Championship. The game was supposed to be played in Israel, but the USSR didn't recognize Israel, and Moscow refused to allow the Soviet team to travel there or host the Maccabi team in Russia. So the game was played in a small village in eastern Belgium in a match called the Fight Between David and Goliath. David won, 91-79. And after the game, the team star, Tal Brody, spoke for all Israelis. Today, we celebrate the accomplishments of our modern Jewish sports heroes, like the Jewish women who have dominated the sport of figure skating. Americans like Sarah Hughes and Sasha Cohen, Russia's Irina Rodnina, and Oksana Bayul, who became Ukraine's first gold medalist in any sport. There are mega soccer stars who embrace their Jewish ancestry, such as Holland's Edgar Davids and England's David Beckham, who credits his Jewish grandfather for being his life's greatest influence. There is Amari Stoudemire, the National Basketball Association Rookie of the Year in 2003, Israel's Omri Caspi, and the Soviet Union's hockey star Yuri Lyapkin. And there are the Americans, Lenny Kreiselberg, who won 4 Olympic gold medals, Derek Torres, who medaled in 5 different Olympic games, Alex Bregman, who led his team to a Baseball World Series victory,
And Rosen delivers.
quarterback Josh Rosen, known as the Hebrew Hammer, and this past February's National Football League Super Bowl Most Valuable Player, Julian Edelman. And in gymnastics, there's the determination of Kerry Strug, overcoming a serious injury to bring home the gold for her team, the success of 5-time Olympic champion Agnes Coletti, and the brilliance of Aly Raisman.
There's so much that we can learn and teach our own children from sports. Teamwork, selflessness, winning, respect.
Fact is, sports is one of the ways in which people come together. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
With each victory, with each success, the stereotype that has existed so many years is fading from memory.
I don't believe it.
Our athletes are creating an image that can make us all very proud. One of Jews who can and do succeed in every aspect of modern life.